Hi guys, welcome back to OC Avery. Now in today's video we've got a bit of something different for you. Rather than visiting the birds once again, we're going to do that every other week. So we'll visit the birds one week like we did last week, we'll do something different this week, and then we'll visit them again next week, and we'll just continue that just while they molt out, because not an awful lot happens. So what today's video is all about is actually how OC Avery started and how my passion for birds began. I thought I always find it interesting to hear other people's stories of how they began and sort of how all the balls started rolling for them. So I thought I'd share mine today and tell you about the birds that I've got experience with, which you might not have known about, you know, how it's developed over the past few years, and all sorts of things like that. So also after this video, go over to my Instagram and you can scroll through hundreds of photos of where we've gone down all the way past through the years to the first day that I got my aviary, which was originally this shed. So let's start by talking about where my passion for birds began. So from being a young age, me and my dad, we used to go bird watching, and he would tell me stories about when he was younger, about the bird nesting things, and where they would go around as children and they would try and find bird nests and so forth, and they had the interest of the British birds there obviously, and it was just trying to understand them, the nesting habits, and the challenge of trying to find a nest. So obviously they found all sorts of different things as children, you know, from the common blackbird. They found many many sort of greenfinch nests, for example. Goldfinches were a rarity in those days, yet they're quite common now. So it really began from hearing those stories, and I love watching the wild birds, you know, from being very small, and doing things like that with my dad. So that's where it got rolling, and that I'd say that's about 4 years old, and then it kept going from there, for where we finally got the first birds. And those first birds were in 2013, which were chickens. So I began with chickens. My dad picked up some eggs, some hatching eggs, from a place in Preston, in near Liverpool, I believe anyway. You know, on a work trip, and he brought those eggs back for me because I saw something specific and something which caught my eye, which was a breed of chicken called the Gold Spangled Thuringian, and this is a German breed of chicken. It's a bantam breed as well, so they are quite small. They've obviously got the spangling now. That doesn't mean an awful lot to us in the British bird world, but I believe in the budgie world that's something that's looked for in budgies. Don't quote me on that, but from what I've seen on posts on different sites, I believe that might be something, but correct me if I'm wrong. So the Gold Spangled Thuringian, I had 6 eggs, and we had 2 of them hatch. Now, bearing in mind, in 2013, at this point I'm 10 years old, and I'm approaching 11 in October, and they hatched July 27th, 2013. Now, I remember that date because obviously that was the first day I got birds, and that was a massive day in my life, as you can tell. So we got those chickens hatched, and we got these cute little fluffy chicks. And I'd reared chickens before for my uncle. He'd brought us brooders round, and I'd done that with silkies and all sorts, and I finally got my own. So these guys hatched, and over the course of about 16 weeks we saw them grow up into almost adult chickens, and we got a cock and a hen, obviously a cockerel and a hen. So we had Pecky, who was the cockerel, and we had Bronzy, who was the hen, and these are lovely chickens. They were fantastic. I'd let them roam the yard, and they would quite happily come in the house, and we didn't know about it, and then we'd find them on the floor in the hall, and they'd just be chilling there having a good time. So that's how it started with the chickens. And then later that year, and this is something that not many people know about, but 5 days before Christmas in 2013, my house burnt down. The last day of school before Christmas, and I didn't end up going home because my house had burnt to the floor. So that is where everything kind of came to a halt. The chickens then moved on and went to my uncle's place whilst we got the house sorted. From that point, then we rented a property out further in the Peak District from where I live today, and thankfully, because it was in the countryside, it was quite common for people to have chickens, and we had a huge stretch of land on the rented property, which was next to the River Derwent, and we had a chicken coop already built in there, which was brilliant. So the chickens came across, and so did some more. We went and picked up a pair of game bird bantams. Now, when I say pair, this is 2 hens. We had the Old English game, I believe, so sort of a dilute version. Lovely birds. There was called Fluffy and Bolt. My brother named Fluffy, and I named Bolt. Bolt was a tiny little game bird bantam hen. She never laid an egg, or she laid the odd one, but that was it. But I felt sorry for her, and I wanted her over a different chicken that would have been more desirable, because this chicken was small, and that's why I wanted it. So they then came to live with Pecky and Bronzy. From that point, it's then spring of 2014. We've been in the house about 2 months, and the chickens have then been breeding. Pecky, our cockerel, our rooster of the Gold Spangled Thuringian, was in breeding condition, and he bred with the Old English game, in which we had some eggs. So I put the eggs in the incubator, but also got some Silver Spangled Hamburgs, which are another German breed, similarly related to the Gold Spangled. However, they aren't bearded like the Thuringians. So they bred, and we had 3 or 4 of the Silver Spangles hatch, and we had our very own, which was the first bird I ever bred, my first chicken, and we called it Teddy. And that was a crossbreed hybrid hen, never really done before, because they're a rare breed, the Gold Spangles, and they produced Teddy, who was a real troublemaker. She loved to escape from the pen somehow. I don't know how she did it, and then as it kept going on, and anyway, we moved back into the house that I'm at now still, which I've grown up in October of 2014, so 10 months after the fire. And that's when the chickens then came back here, and then we started to get some more. So the Silver Spangles, sadly, all 3 of them turned out to be cockerels. I got 1 cockerel, I couldn't really risk having any more, so the Silver Spangles went on, but Teddy stayed with us as a hen. She was a fantastic bird. She actually went broody quite often, did sit on eggs. Sadly, never did rear any for us, just because I don't think she had the patience or been disturbed. But anyway, from there, we had a few more. So we had 2 Pekins. We had a Millefleur Pekin Bantam and I want to call it a light Sussex Pekin Bantam chicken. This was, these are small birds with fluffy, small chickens with very feathery, fluffy feet. And they were lovely. So we had those guys. They would lay an egg every 3 days or so. I'd kind of got rare breeds and bantam breeds as well. So they weren't really egg layers. But then we did bring on some egg layers. We had, I believe, Chocolate and Brownie, who were Warren hens, or as some might know them, Lowland Rangers, or they're basically a Rhode Island Red crossbreed chicken. They're fantastic. They'll lay an egg every day for probably 2 or 3 years straight, and then it kind of cuts off. They're the hens that are mainly used, commonly seen at battery farms and commercial egg laying chicken egg farming things. So we had those guys, and all went well until 2015 in February. The door on the chicken coop was down. It was a hot night. Actually, it might not have been February. It could have been even later in the year. It was a really hot night. It was about 30 degrees in the daytime, so it won't have been February. And the chicken coop was quite warm. And with having quite a few hens in there, what I'd got is some mesh doors that were built to fit the chicken coop. So I put a mesh door on and left it. I got up the following morning to find that a fox had absolutely destroyed my flock. Chocolate, the Warren hen, had clearly gone out of interest to the front, and the fox had took her first, and she was gone, and I never found her, sadly. I went looking for her around gardens and all sorts of places, and we never found her. So this is 2015, early summer, late spring sort of time. We lost all the chickens that night in a heart attack. However, only Pecky, the cockerel, lived on. Why was this? because we had to move Pecky on because where I live, it wasn't really ideal to have a cockerel. He was quite a noisy lad now that I think of it. I mean, it didn't bother me much as a kid because he was my pet. But as I think of it older, I kind of understand that the cock-a-doodle-doo at 4 in the morning isn't appreciated by any of the neighbours. So Pecky did go on, and he went to a farm of specialising in rare breeds, which was great. It was a great result for him, but obviously sad that I'd lost my pet. And, you know, quite a few tears were shed that day because he was my pet chicken. But anyway, we lost all of the hens, and I was devastated. You know, I was in year 7 at the time as well. I remember going to school that day and really, you know, really not being off it because I'd lost my pets, and they were pets. They weren't egg laying machines to me. They were pets. So anyway, we lost those, and then it kind of went quiet for a little while. We then later in that summer, after repairing the chicken coop, getting it better and making sure it was fox proof to the point where it was literally a chicken fortress, we hatched some more eggs. So I went to source my eggs from a farm that sadly no longer breeds chickens, called Bankview Farm, and these guys were excellent to me as a young lad, obviously interested in birds. They was keen to encourage me, so I got a selection of eggs from them. I got Vorwerks, which are a rare breed, and I got them in the bantam form as well because I do prefer the bantams over the large fowl. And then we got some lavender Aracanas. The lavender Aracanas are an Argentinian breed, I believe, and they're a sort of crested one with beards. They're lovely either way. So we hatched some of those guys. We had 2 Vorwerks hatch and 5 lavender Aracanas. However, one of those chicks was born with black fluff. So that kind of confused me because that's not a general sort of colour for them, obviously, what had happened here. So after going back to the farm for the young chickens vaccinations at 6 weeks old, the farm told me that actually the lavender Aracanas and the Vorwerks were next to each other, and the cockerel had jumped the fence of one of the breeds to the other breed as the week that my eggs were being collected. So clearly what I got here was a Vorwerk cross lavender Aracana. It was a lovely chicken and another troublemaker who I think would have quite got on well with Teddy, who was previous, who was my first bird that I'd bred. So we progressed from there. These chickens grew up. We also brought some more in as youngsters. We brought in some gold campines, which are once again a rare breed, and they're lovely as well. So that was my start with chickens. We're onto the second flock now, and then the ball started rolling from there again. We had a couple of cockerels who had to stay. They went back to the rare breed farm, and then we brought on some more. So we had a hybrid hen, an amber link, and we had a light Sussex hen. They were great egg layers again, so they were my 2 which I knew would almost guaranteed and reliable to produce eggs on a daily basis, whereas the rare breeds would lay every 2 or 3 days. So we got a nice mix there. However, sadly no cockerels did stay on, so we had those guys for a bit. Then it's December of 2015. Me and my family are driving back from my uncle's place when we see a sign outside a farm saying free-range duck eggs for sale. We pulled up at the farm and we got some eggs. We got 6 eggs that day. My incubator got warmed up in the garage, and those 6 eggs didn't end up on someone's plate, but rather end up in the incubator, and no one realised that they hadn't been eaten other than me, because I knew that they were in my incubator. The 5th of January 2016, I go out to the garage and we have 4 little ducklings cheeping, quacking away in the incubator. Realising that no one knew, I should probably tell mum and dad, so I woke mum and dad up. We've got some ducklings. Oh shit. And dad comes out and then sees my ducklings. So this is the first time I've hatched ducklings here, and these were magpie ducks. So we had the first one that was born. He was called Coco. He was a fantastic duck, and here's some photos of him. He was a lovely duck, and I really had a great, it was great with him. He would follow me about, and obviously the ducklings would chase me as obviously there was little. And then we had a few more hatch. I'm afraid that the names do elude me from those guys. But we had 4 ducklings. Sadly, disaster struck with those 3, as the chick crumb that we had for rearing these youngsters didn't contain enough protein. We lost 3 of the youngsters because their legs didn't develop properly, and it was actually like a locked knee joint, which was a real shame. And obviously, being young, I'd just not understood it. And we'd probably bought the wrong stuff, sadly, for the chick crumb, even though it was the same stuff we use with chickens. So we ended up with 1 duck, which was Coco. Coco lived with the chickens for a while, and then came 2 more ducks, which were Indian runner cross Cayugas, and we called them Starsky and Hutch. Those 2, we had a drake and a duck. So we had obviously eggs being laid, which was great. Forward round to October 2016, the first aviary lands at OC Avery, and that is here to the bag. This is a 6 by 4 foot size shed. This is nothing special. We've got a door here, and I've since took out panels and what to make this shed, and that's where I bred canaries, zebra finches, well, just canaries and zebra finches at that, and we also had my first Japanese quail. So in that 6 by 4 aviary, which was here, we had the zebra finches, the canaries, and the Japanese quail. By far the most prolific breeders were the zebra finches, of course. We had a flock of about 25 birds coming from the RSPCA, which had been rescued from a property. We had pretty much almost an equal ratio of cocks to hens, so it worked out quite well with nearly 13 pairs of zebra finches. We had a pair of crossbred fifes, as I now know them, so just mixed breed feeder canaries almost, and then a trio of Japanese quail. So zebra finches, this is a photo of the first one I ever bred, which was in sort of November 2016. And remember here, these birds were literally in this aviary. They had no heaters and no lights. Obviously they had a mesh door and a mesh window, and that was pretty much it, and they bred pretty much all year round without a problem, which was weird because they didn't really follow a cycle. I don't really know the zebra finch cycle for when they breed anyway, but canaries, we only ever bred 2 of them, which was later on, not from that pair. So from that point, it got to 2017 spring. We upgraded, which became this. So what you see here was now my double door system. Rather than going in and basically risking losing birds, we had a double door system now built, and that kind of worked in that what I could do is leave the door open, the birds could come out. We had, visualize the hole here, is there was a perch straight across, and the birds could come outside and they would have airflow through, and they really enjoyed that. We had a plant in here as well, and they were happy. So we had a bit of all sorts really going on there. And then when that extension came, we moved with a few more species. So we brought in a pair of Java sparrows, a pair of diamond doves, and a pair of linealated parakeets, which we rescued from the RSPCA as well. So those guys came in, and then it was pretty good, to be honest with you. We bred a few Javas just as we began to build the next stage. We bred quite a few diamond doves and rescued a few. So I had the light blue ones, the brown ones, and a pied almost white diamond dove as well. And we bred a few of those guys, and that included in what we had a coconut shell upturned here. We bred quite a few diamond doves in there. They were very easy birds to breed. So then we became more interested in extending the aviary come the summer of 2017. So that is when this became the whole indoor area as you see it now, and we boarded out the walls and what have you, and the roof, and we made it so this was sort of a 10-foot by 4-foot inside shed, and then added an extension on it to make the whole aviary 14 feet by 10 feet. So it was basically a 10-foot by 10-foot extension on the aviary, which was massive, and obviously this is it stands just above 6 feet tall, so I mean I have to duck pretty much as I walk through what are now the flights. But in that aviary, we then planted it, made it look natural. I had mulch and compost on the floor, and we had a variety of native to the UK and exotic plants in there, and it got on really well. That's then when the Chinese quail came in. So I bought a pair of Chinese quail, we had a couple of eggs off them, and then I bought a big batch of 64 off an eBay seller. The Chinese quail got on really well. We hatched a good probably 30 or so from that hatch, and this is in a low-tech incubator at the time, so that went really well. We then had about 30 odd Chinese quail. We had probably a few more Japanese quail by that point. We had a couple of whites and fawn or cinnamon ones, I believe it would be called now, and overall, so we had about 40 quail at that point running around in this aviary. There was more than enough room. They were happy. We got quite a few bred and everything like that, and even the Chinese quail would rear at their own. So we had several different broody hens. They would sit on their own eggs and they would hatch them, and then we would see them running about the aviary with these tiny little chicks that you could probably fit inside a mini egg. So it was great really having that, and obviously having it naturally set out as well. It went great. So the RSPCA then gave me a call and said, we want you to have this pair of cockatiels in. That's where I decided I wasn't sure how they get on with the finches, but you know what, we'll take a punt at it and we'll see how it goes. I brought this pair in, and within 2 months we had our first cockatiel chicks in a nest box, which was actually positioned here, like bang on this wall, and it was great. Sadly, those chicks didn't make it to fledging. The parents were inexperienced, and we didn't get any further with those. They then come to their second round in about May of 2018. That is when it really started to kick off with the exotics, and then we've got white Javas, we've got fawn ones, we've got pied ones. I even had a black-headed Java sparrow, and I believe I got given that by an oldish chap, and I didn't breed any off it, but I did have a black-headed Java sparrow, which was great, to be honest. Something quite unusual I've not really seen much of. So we had those, and we'd breed quite a few Javas. I'd probably breed 20 that whole year. The diamond doves, they quite easily breed 30 of those from several pairs. Zebra finches was an abundance of, and then the cockatiels in the May, they had their first youngster, which is this bird here. So here's Goldie. Obviously, as you can see, she is a pet bird. There's a cage with a ladder and shiny things and mirrors and what have you. But so yes, she's my grandparents' pet. I bred her. She was the first cockatiel I bred, so I believe it's a fawn pearl or something like that. Either way, lovely bird. I mean, she's pretty friendly, but she's she's in mine at the moment on holiday, so therefore she's a bit uncomfortable. But there you are. So that's the first cockatiel I bred. So obviously you've just seen Goldie the cockatiel, and she was my first cockatiel I bred. She's not my pet bird, she actually belongs to my grandparents, and yeah, so she became their pet, and that was the first cockatiel I bred, and she's great, obviously. So yeah, so that's the cockatiels, and then the ball started rolling from there, where for the next 2 or 3 years we had cockatiels breeding 5 clutches a year, four youngsters a clutch, 20 youngsters a year per pair, and considering I had 3 pairs at that point, that's a lot of birds. And what I used to do is hand rear them ish. We would have the parents do all the rearing and hard work, but I would take them out almost daily, handle them, talk to them, and make them used to a human presence, so that when they came to be sold on to people who wanted a pet cockatiel, then if they came to me, they'd get a bird that was parent reared, easy enough to sort out like that, takes the stress away from it for me, but they're also very easy to tame like that, get them talking and get them used to people. Because they was already used to me handling them, it didn't take long for the new owners to get them, you know, hand tame, get them talking. So it was really nice to get that going, and we brought in some different birds from that point. So we brought in some Bengalese. I bred several Bengalese. We brought in silverbills, Indian silverbills, I believe. They went well, and we bred 2 or 3 of those, but I didn't have them for too long. We had some yellow bishop weavers. They built quite a variety of different nests in bamboo and different sort of shrubs, but sadly we never bred any of them, because every time we did sort of get to a point where they was almost ready, the hen would not take to that cockbird for whatever reason. She would not stick around in the little bundles they made. They eat the cockbird that he weaved in the shrubs. But either way, so we had quite a few different things there, and I mean, I used to sell Chinese painted quail eggs on eBay to a variety of different people. We had a person on the Isle of Man would bought pretty much 60 eggs every month from me. I had you know, I've had lines come over from America. We've got a Chinese line directly, an American line. We've got a Belgium line, and then a British line as well. So we had quite a variety of blood in with the Chinese quails, and it went really well, to be honest. We bred a variety of colours, and I wouldn't be able to tell you those colours because I didn't know. I just knew I called them what I saw them as. So we had lavenders, is what I would say, what would now call pretty much a silver, like an agate type. We had cinnamons, we had tuxedo ones, we had black ones, like cobalt, really. We had such a variety of them, and it went really quite well. So that was our mixed aviary, and that stood for a good few years as it was all sort of planted and just sort of free flight as the birds wished. And with the extension of the aviary, we saw the chickens and the ducks move on to greener pastures, because it was really getting to a point where I was thinking my interest is going more towards the finches, as you can see, than the poultry side of it. And it doesn't mean I'm not going to revisit it at some point, because I will, but at least that's where it went. And the chickens and the ducks did move on to several different places, and they all went to good homes, obviously, because they were still my pets. So that's sort of how the aviary all started going. And then come 2019, in the January, I heard about Stafford Show for the first time at a place in Mansfield, at a pet shop there, and I was talking to one of the guys and suggested going. I thought, brilliant, let's do it. So turned up to Stafford, and I knew exactly what I was going for, so I went in and I bought an expensive pair of native bullfinches, not realising the price and how much they're actually supposed to be for. So we bought a pair of native boys, and they were a nice pair, but knowing what I know now, not worth the money. They weren't the best birds you could buy for the price I had to pay for them. We had a pair of greenfinches, which were decent birds. They were all right. They weren't, they're nothing compared to what I've got now, but they were good starter birds. And we had a pair of yellow hammers. Sadly, I did get stung with the yellow hammers because I was a bit more unaware of things back then with ringing. I knew that they had to be BBC or YO way wrong, and this chap told me, they were bred in Belgium, so they've got a different ring on. I'd looked at the rings and I couldn't see anything that made me think that they weren't legitimate birds. We bought this pair of yellow hammers, and to be fair, I did get a good price because they were at the end of the show, but then again, I did pay for some wild caught birds, which was a real shame because I didn't know that at the time. Due to my inexperience, I didn't know that those birds were. I thought they were fully legit because of what I'd heard about them and looked at the rings, and I couldn't see anything wrong. We had those birds for a few months. We sadly lost the bully hen going light, and I didn't know about it at the time. The greenies, we didn't breed any off, but we did have 7 clear rounds of eggs off them. Clearly there was a problem with the cockbird. With that and the yellow hammers, they just stuck around in this aviary the whole season. And to be fair, they did calm down a bit, but it was the only way that I could really get them happy was just in here. And then we did end up did go off to a friend who sorted the birds out for me, obviously with them being wild caught birds and me not knowing. I did have, was panicking and worrying about it because of obviously the rules and the law in Britain of keeping native finches and birds. So they did go elsewhere to a friend. I'm not going to mention names, but he very kindly sorted them out for me and put me on the right track with it. So it was really good. But that was in March. So come about April or May time, I was very kindly gifted some cobalt red poles, some normal red poles, and some siskins by my good friend Stacey Turner. Stacey, really kicked this off for me with the British birds. Invited me round. I had a few. I actually had a canary hen and a Java sparrow hen off him the first time I met him. He just said he got these birds if I'd like them. Obviously a great gesture, very kindly done. Stacey, if you're watching, thank you ever so much, mate, for the help you've given me and still continue to give me with all sorts of different things like that. So we then had these cobalts and the siskins and normal red poles as well. So we had a bit of stuff off there, and from one pair of red poles I bred 8 youngsters, and we had a variety of different youngsters there, including a pair of cobalts, red poles that reared 8 youngsters to about 5 days old, and suddenly something went wrong and we lost them, but they reared all 8 in one clutch, which was a bit astounding. So in that year we bred an Isabel red pole, which was the first time I was convinced it was an albino. In my inexperience, seeing a white bird with red eyes, it's got to be albino. Obviously not understanding the mutations that we've got today, and that I do understand today. Obviously we've got an Isabel down there, and I can tell you it's an Isabel what I bred. We bred cobalts and we bred normals. We didn't breed any siskins. That I didn't realise with the siskin cocks and how hard work they are. They destroy eggs, no problem, and just that's what siskins can almost do sometimes. So that's how that season went. It was all right, and I was very pleased with bred red poles, and it took us round to Stafford show, the last national show in 2019. I took one of the cobalt red poles, 2 of them, which I had bred from that year. And I took them to the show, and that's where I got my first ever show and my first ever win, which was actually best novice hardbill at the whole show. So that was a really big win for me, and it really gave me the encouragement to continue to want showbirds. So then from the win at the National with the Yorkshire British Bird and Mule and Hybrid Club, we then showed at several other shows, local shows, so another Yorkshire show, and then a couple more local to me. So I did quite a bit of winning that year with those birds, and at that show I did pick up some other ones, the Stafford one. So I picked up crossbills, my first crossbills, picked up some native bullies, picked up another pair of greenies, I think. Mule hens, I picked up a bit of all sorts, to be honest. And that's really where you then will have seen my first YouTube videos coming round. From that year, we went through the show season, saw a variety of birds, did quite a bit as my first year, and then obviously COVID hit, and I went to the Stafford show in March 2020, picked up a few last birds, and then that's the last time that any of us showed. Went to a bird show, obviously not showing at the spring bird show. The birds aren't in condition to really do that. They're going into the breeding season, they've lost most of the weight off them. So then come May of that year, I believe it was the May or late April, you saw the first videos from OC Avery, and then you've hopefully followed a lot of them since then. So if you want to know a bit more, just go back there and have a flick through and you'll find stuff. So that takes us to this point, and obviously bringing on more birds, breeding more birds like we've done this year. So that's really how OC Avery came about and how my passion for birds began. And just took you through a timeline of that, and it's hopefully you're interested in it and hopefully you've enjoyed it, and it's going to be a good timeline video for me to watch back in a few years time, remembering a fefew things that I may have forgotten, and that's one of the things I'm going to have to write down a lot of different things, because with so much stuff going on, I could quite easily forget. So that's it, guys. That is how OC Avery began in the early days, my passion for birds and whatever. So please go over to my Instagram as well, follow us, and just have a scroll through photos, and you'll see so many old photos of different things I've bred, different things I kept, and things that haven't featured in this video, because I've spoke about everything, but I can't get all the photos in. So go and have a look, and hopefully you'll enjoy that and find it useful. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you've enjoyed it and found it interesting. If you'd like to share how you started out in the hobby and where your passion for birds began, then leave it in the comments below, and I'd love to read your stories. So thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, smash the like button, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.